Next up, we got. Do Germans talk about World War II? Now, a lot of y'all was requesting this video. We reacted to a lot of the World Wars. Oversimplified, I should say. And by the way, I am sick right now. So if my energy is a little off and stuff like that, that's why. Do got me some Starbucks. Now, we are going to watch a video about the Starbucks and sugary coffee. But this isn't coffee. This is like a medicine ball thing. So it's like medicine, like tea, basically, for my throat. Anyways, though, a lot of y'all was requesting this video. So, we're going to check it out. You know what I'm saying? We watched the World War II. We also watched about Hitler, his full life story, oversimplified. So now it's time to see what do Germans teach about it. Because I was wondering, you know, how the history books is. Because you already know U.S. history, we don't teach anything valuable. All right? Anything valuable at all. So I was wondering, how do Germans teach about something that was so horrific? You know? So, hey, hit the like button, hit that sub button. Also, too, I have made a memberships. So if you want to join the CT Kingdom and get exclusive videos, a vault of videos, early access, hit the link in the description and pin comment.
Do Germans talk about the Holocaust? What do they teach about World War II in school? And is it okay to make a Hitler joke around a German?
Wow.
Hello, servus, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Feli. I'm originally from Munich, Germany, but I've been living here in Cincinnati, Ohio, on and off since 2016. If you think of Germany, especially in a historical context, what comes to your mind? I bet at least 99% of you are thinking of Nazis, World War II, the Third Reich, Hitler, and the Holocaust. And rightly so. It's one of the darkest chapters in history. I know that. You know that, yet a lot of people are unsure if this is something they can bring up around me and other Germans. Some people assume that it's a total taboo topic in Germany, something that isn't really discussed in society. But how much of that is actually true? How does Germany deal with its dark past? What is taught about it in school? And is it okay to bring the topic up around Germans? Now, I have answered this question in different contexts before, like in this Q&A video, for example, where I gave a quick 2-minute summary, but today I would like to dive a little deeper. I'd like to talk about how this topic has been dealt with publicly in Germany over the last 78 years since the end of World War II.
All right, so it says, number one, Germany's Vergangenheit Hasamhahi Bewatelegig equals coping with the past. All right.
I'd like to share my personal experience of how it was approached in my school and my personal environment. And I'd also like to share how other Germans from different regions and of different generations have experienced this. To do so, I asked my German viewers to fill out a survey about the topic, and I received over 230 responses that will give you guys and myself a pretty good idea of how Germans in general. Also, too,
let me know in the comments if you were alive around that time. Wait. Nobody's alive around that time, right? You might be like 80 years old. You have to be like 80. I don't think I have 80-year-old people watching my videos, so never mind. Never mind then. Because I was gonna say, tell me about your experience. But I don't. It was in like the early 1940s. Like, no one is alive. Okay, so. Never mind.
Think about the curriculums and the overall approach of how we deal with our country's dark past. After the end of the war in Germany in May of 1945, the Allied powers, France, UK, USA, and the Soviet Union, divided Germany into 4 occupation zones and started the process of denazification, demilitarization, decentralization, and democratization, also referred to as the 4 Ds. To denazify the country, the NSDAP, so the Nazi Party, and all sub-organizations were banned, and its laws were abolished, and all signs of the Third Reich were erased from everyday life, including books, uniforms, medals, and street names. Germany also had to make reparations.
Hitler Street? Bro, I ain't gonna lie, Hitler really made like a cult, bro. He really did, from the inside out. Now, we actually understand more about the subject now since we watched the oversimplified version of Hitler's life. So I can understand it. And by the way, that video is out right now on my memberships. It'll be on YouTube later, but it's out right now on my memberships. So we understand what's going on. All right, we had to do a real deep dive into that video. That video was actually so bad that it got yellow marked. All right, so yeah. But anyways, though, he really did it from the beginning, bro. From the beginning. All right, it really just started with his parents. All right, number one, his parents aren't even. They're from the same family. His parents are from the same family. So that just starts right there, bro. All right, starts with the dad. That's what it started with, and then everything else. But he had his own street name, bro. Street name in books, bro. I don't even want to know what was in the books, bro. I don't even want to know what was he teaching, bro.
All signs of the Third Reich were erased from everyday life, including books, uniforms, medals, and street names. Germany also had to make reparation payments to the victorious powers and other affected countries that were mainly paid in machinery, manufacturing plants, and forced labor. Most Germans were also subject to investigations by the International Military Tribunal that was looking to identify the different roles people played in the Holocaust and in committing war crimes. Germans
Right, I did see a video about that too on my YouTube page that popped up. It said explaining all of the war crimes. Now let's look that up real quick, because I didn't really know, like, what is a war crime? Like, what do you mean by war crime? War crimes are serious violations of international humanitarian law, so specifically the Hague Conventions. Serious violation known as international humanitarian law. I think that's what they were just talking about. Yeah. And the laws of war. Oh, they have laws of war? I didn't know that. For initiating a war and conduct the hostilities. Laws of war define sovereignty and nationhood. Now, we need to look at the sovereignty word. There's a supreme, absolute, uncontrollable power residing within a state.
Sovereignty.
Supreme power or authority. So, sideways, go back. Laws of war define supreme power or authority and nationhood. Okay, supreme power. Okay, so yeah, supreme power. So I didn't know it was laws when it came to war. That's kind of crazy. And this drink is actually helping right now, bro. Because earlier I couldn't even talk, but now I can like talk. So I'm glad I'm getting a little better. States and territories occupied. By the way, this is the only time I drink Starbucks. I don't drink Starbucks. I don't drink coffee in general. So whenever I get sick and I need like tea, honey tea, and stuff like that, that's when I get this. That's when I get Starbucks. Maybe if I'm with a girl and she likes Starbucks, I might get some with her. But nah. Address the declarations of war is a formal act by which one state announces existing or impending war activity against another. Yeah, that's when you start a war, basically. The modern laws of war addresses how to start a war, acceptance of surrender, so how to surrender, and the treatment of prisoners of war. Oh wait, what is this? Is a person held captive? We know what a prisoner of war is, but it said something like, wait, what did it say? It said something like the treatment. Oh, how to treat prisoners of war. So you shouldn't really be killing people that's prisoners. So if you're in a war, let me know if this is right, by the way. If you're in a war and you invade another country, we just learned what invade meant. If you invade another country, overthrow their government, then keep them prisoners, they teach you in the laws of war how to treat the prisoners once you invade. Because they know that war gets out of control, but it still has to be some type of law because Hitler. So let me know if I'm explaining that right. The principles of distinction. I don't know what the hell that is. What is that? Distinction? Wait. Why does distinction mean military necessity? Oh, along with distinction and proportionality is one of the three important and key principles of international humanitarian law governing the legal use of force. Oh, okay. So, is one of the three important key principles of international. Okay, so this is one of the main key principles of going to war. The legal use of force in armed conflict. Oh, wow. Okay. Is governed by several constraints. An attack or action must be intended to help the military defeat of the enemy, right? It must be an attack on a military objective, not just regular people, right? And the harm caused to civilians or civilian property must be proportional and not excessive in relation to the concrete and direct military advantage anticipated. Now, my question is, what if somebody just went out and didn't listen to the rules? Then what? What happens then? All right, we learned a little bit more. I love being able to learn on this channel. It's crazy.
Divided into 5 categories. Military tribunal that was looking to identify the different roles people played in the Holocaust and in committing war crimes. Germans were divided into 5 categories, from major offender to exonerated individuals. Major offenders were tried in the first Nuremberg trial from November 1945 to October 1946, and in 12 subsequent Nuremberg trials that were solely held by the US. All in all, 36 defendants were sentenced to death, 125 received prison sentences, 23 of them for life. Not all of these verdicts were actually executed, though. A lot of the convicts ended up being released after just a few years and pardoned from the death penalty as the Denazification process became more and more lenient in the Western zones. Due to the extremely high number of cases, less severe offenders were soon handed over to civilian tribunals under German administration, and it became increasingly difficult to find a balance between punishment and rebuilding the country, for which the occupying powers needed to fill a lot of important positions.
Because if you think about it, Hitler took over Germany. He started a revolution in Germany. So once once the economy was bad and everybody needed to find if they wanted to be a far left or a far right, there was no more people in the middle anymore. Everybody started looking at Hitler, right? After he put everybody in the far left in jail, it was nobody else. It was no other political party. It was nobody else. It was just him. So then he started getting all this. He started getting all this clout, right? And by the way, the last president of Germany was also an anti-Semitic. So the stuff he was doing was not even out of control to them at that time. It wasn't even out of control because the last president was already said the same. He already said it. You know what I'm saying? He might have I was gonna say he might have been worse, but never mind. Anyways, though, so when he took over Germany, it was like all of Germany. You know, obviously, it was all of Germany. So that means you're going to put everybody in prison? Because everybody was a Nazi at that time. So you're going to put everybody in prison. And they say they're trying to punish people, yet they're trying to rebuild the economy. You feel me? So they need workers. They need people to spend money. They need a civilization. If they put everybody in prison, then what? So a lot of people probably got off off the hook because they needed people. They needed everybody back in their respective spots, because you can't even have a society if you don't have. I don't know what the word is, but it's like the triangle of people. So you got the people at the sovereignty, all right? You got the sovereignty at the top, and it goes all the way down, right? So if you don't have none of that, then you don't even have a society. You just have like a group of people living in a big ass country. You feel me? So they had to put everybody really back into their lives, you know?
Difficult
Let me know
to
if I
find a
explain that
balance
right.
between punishment and rebuilding the country, for which the occupying powers needed to fill a lot of important positions. And having hundreds of thousands of Germans in internment camps didn't exactly make that easy. Now,
there we go. I said it right. Okay, we learning. Yeah. Remember, at one point, bro, I didn't even know what Europe was. Okay. Now we're learning about World War II, bro. Now I'm able to articulate World War II. This is amazing, bro. This is amazing. This is amazing.
The occupying powers needed to fill a lot of important positions. And
now I do want to do a video. I want to do a video on trying to see if I can describe where every country is at in Europe. Now, I don't know how good I would be at that, but I know where Germany's at. I think I know where UK is at. They all at the top. UK and like Sweden, and then or Netherlands, and then see at the bottom. I don't know who's at the bottom. I know Portugal's over there. Portugal and I think Spain, and then Russia all over there next to Germany, and then I don't know who's right next to Germany. Is it Britain? Maybe, I don't know. But I think I know a little something, you know what I'm saying?
And it became increasingly difficult to find a balance between punishment and rebuilding the country, for which the occupying powers needed to fill a lot of important positions. And having hundreds of thousands of Germans in internment camps didn't exactly make that easy. Now, together with the development of the Cold War, during which West Germany was considered an important ally, the focus quickly started shifting away from strict denazification and more towards rehabilitation. By 1948, countless trials were ceased or never started, and as I said, lots of people were pardoned.
And then you gotta think about it, it costs a lot of money to have a jail, right? So you got all these people, yeah, it's paying you, but you need to be able to still receive money to keep this jail upheld, right? Keep everything running. So if you don't have no money to keep this jail running, then you don't have a jail no more. So you need people to pay taxes so they can fund the government, and the government can pay the jails. But if people are in jail and they can't go to work, how are they going to pay for it?
Is heavily criticized.
They need a society,
and
bro.
As I said, lots of people were pardoned, which to this day is heavily criticized, as it meant that people that used to be active members of the Nazi Party ended up keeping their high-ranking jobs and remained in positions of power in the newly founded West German Republic.
That's crazy.
In the Soviet occupation zone, denazification was followed through a lot more strictly and quickly. By spring of 1948, they had fired and replaced over 500,000 people. But how did the Germans themselves deal with the war and this dark chapter moving forward? Well, for the first 2 decades after the war, it pretty much just wasn't talked about at all. The country was full of people who were actively involved in the crimes of the Third Reich, and most common way of dealing with it was silence. Most of them weren't willing to face their own guilt, let alone take responsibility for their actions, and their families often preferred staying in the dark about how badly their own spouses, parents, and grandparents were really involved in it all. Same thing applied to schools. Many of the teachers were formally involved with the Nazis, and the details of the Third Reich were barely part of the curriculum. It wasn't really until the 1960s that young adults in Germany started demanding from their elders to take responsibility for their past and to start an open public dialogue. Some of this was part of the 1968 student movements in West Germany that arose parallel to protests all over the world at the time. The outrage was partly triggered by different events that had taken place throughout the 60s, including the so-called swastika epidemic, the Eichmann trial, the Frankfurt Auschwitz trial, the debate about the imminent statute of limitations of NS crimes, and the election of a former Nazi Party member, Kurt Georg Kiesinger, as chancellor. As a result, West Germans finally started owning up to their country's past more intensely in the 70s and 80s. Nazi Germany and the Holocaust became a mandatory part of school curriculums, and TV shows like the American miniseries Holocaust that about a third of the population watched on German TV.
Oh wow, they have a movie about this? Now, should we watch the movie? Nah, we will gonna save this for my other channel. Right, I told y'all I have another channel. It's actually called Watch with CT. where I react to anime, movies, TV shows, and yeah. So everything that's with watching stuff. So this could be on that channel. So y'all let me know.
Prompted people to...
Now I have quick little discussion about the channel. I have made a channel. I made a couple videos starting Attack on Titan. I did episode 1 and episode 2. But I took a break because I've been on this channel. So I will get back. All right, I just got to get my priorities in check so I can get everything moving at the same time. So eventually that will be another channel where I'm constantly uploading daily. All right, so if y'all want to subscribe to that channel and be a part of that, it's gonna be in the description. Watch with CT. All right.
Reflect on the brutality of the genocide of 6 million European Jews and the emotional stories of the victims. Other notable productions of the time are the German war film Das Boot, as well as the French documentary Shoah, among others. Today, Germany practices a very active culture of remembrance. It's all about taking responsibility for our country's devastating actions of the past and making sure that something like that can and will never happen again. This includes that it's actually illegal in Germany to deny or downplay the Holocaust.
Oh,
17 other European countries have similar laws, by the way.
Whoa.
It's also illegal to do the Hitler salute or use Nazi insignia, unless it's part of art, science, research, or teaching, and the topic is a visible part of public life. Many former concentration camps have been turned into memorial sites that can be visited today to learn from the past and understand the scale of the Nazis' crimes. In addition to that, street names, memorials, museums, and stumbling stones commemorate the victims of the Nazi regime all over Germany. The Stumbling Stone, or Stolperstein project, was started in the 90s by German artist Gunter Demnig and entails brass plates inscribed with the names and life dates of victims that are set into the pavement outside of their last known address or workplace. You'll never know when and where you'll quite literally stumble over one, which shows that deportation took place anywhere and everywhere. And by bending down to read the victims' names, you're pretty much bowing down to them to pay them respect. To this day, over 75,000 of those stumbling stones have been laid all over Europe, making it the world's largest decentralized memorial. And of course, there are countless movies, documentaries, and books that critically deal with the Third Reich and the post-war era, and that ensure that the victims of the NS regime aren't forgotten. To this day, the historical responsibility...
Now, low-key, now as I'm sitting here thinking about it, if we watch that movie, I feel like low-key we could just watch that on this channel. Low-key, though. Maybe I'll make it memberships only. Maybe. I don't know. But we maybe could just watch the movie on this channel. And this would be like the only movie we watch on this channel because it's important to see, you know. So maybe I'll do that. Let me know in the comments how y'all feel about that. If I should put it on my actual channel where I watch movies at, or should I just keep it on this channel, just a one-off video, one-off movie video. I don't know. I think about it.
That the victims of the NS regime aren't forgotten. To this day, the historical responsibilities that Germany carries are deeply ingrained in German culture and politics. Germany has a very unique relationship to Israel, for example, and in the late 50s and early 60s, they signed contracts with Israel, with the Jewish Claims Conference, and 12 European countries regarding compensation to victims of the NS regime, some of which are being paid up to today. You'll also notice that most Germans don't really have a very pronounced sense of patriotism. With the exception of sporting events like the Soccer World Cup, you won't see a lot of German flags, for example, not even in schools and other public buildings, unless they're government institutions. There's no such thing as the American Pledge of Allegiance, and the German national anthem is only sung on a small number of occasions. Whether that goes back to an ongoing feeling of guilt and shame, and whether or not that's still called for, is actually a much discussed question among Germans.
That's wild.
By the way, you won't find any Nazi statues in Germany. Hitler himself actually banned any kind of memorials of him from the beginning, and other statues were either taken down by the Nazis themselves to repurpose their metal for the war effort, they were destroyed by bombings, or, at the latest, taken down by the Allied powers after the war. Now, what do German students learn about World War II and the Holocaust in school? Let me start by sharing my own experience. As you guys know, I'm from Munich, which is in the state of Bavaria, and I went to elementary school and then to a gymnasium there. That's important to note because the school system and the curriculums in Germany actually differ from state to state. Now, I'm 29 years old, so it's been a while, and I don't remember every single detail, but I do know that we started talking about the topic relatively early. I think in 5th or 6th grade. And then we pretty much talked about it all the way until graduation. And it wasn't just in history class, but in a lot of different subjects. It was a very present topic in German class, for example. In 6th grade, we read a book called Damals war es Friedrich, which is about the friendship between a non-Jewish boy and his Jewish neighbor throughout the Third Reich. Then later on, we read books like Die Welle, originally The Wave, which is about a school experiment about the Third Reich. And then we also read...
I wish America did this when it came to slavery. But of course not, all right? Because really, America's still racist to this day, okay? They actually trying to ban more books about slavery, by the way. But you see how Europe actually takes responsibility and they take the trauma and everything, they take it head on and they want to teach about it and get past it, right? Going forward. But no, we would never do that. All right, we want to ban history. They're going to take out small details. They're going to not talk about this person, not talk about how that person did that, that person did that. They're going to tweak with the history books. You feel me? But you guys actually read about it as kids, bro. You know? And actually not only as kids, but it's also in everyday life. It's also in everyday life. They trying to hide the fact of slavery in America, bro.
And then we pretty much talked about it all the way until graduation. And it wasn't just in history class, but in a lot of different subjects. It was a very present topic in German class, for example. In 6th grade, we read a book called Damals war es Friedrich, which is about the friendship between a non-Jewish boy and his Jewish neighbor throughout the Third Reich. Then later on, we read books like Die Welle, originally The Wave, which is about a school experiment about the Third Reich. And then we also read Die Schachnovelle by Stefan Zweig, as well as Andorra and Homo Faber by the Swiss author Max Frisch. We also talked about it in religion/ethics class a lot, because yes, that's a mandatory subject in Bavarian schools. In arts class, we learned about what the Nazis classified as degenerate art and Arts de Kunst, and the topic also came up in the context of arts interpretations. And even in music class, we analyzed the musical and lyrical features of Nazi propaganda songs. And from what I remember, the topic was also touched upon here and there in classes like English, sociology, and geology. In history class, the main focus on the topic was in 9th grade. I think we spent pretty much the whole year learning about the Weimar Republic, World War II, and post-war Germany. And that's also the year where we went to the concentration camp Dachau, which is right outside of Munich. That's something that was mandatory at my school, and I think the same goes for most schools in the area. And then the topic was one of the main focuses again in history class in 11th and 12th grade. Since I grew up in Munich, we also learned a lot about the resistance group of the White Rose, Weiße Rose, since they were located in Munich. I know that Germans in other regions don't learn about them as much, but they were all students at the University of Munich, same university I went to, and they were arrested and killed in their early 20s by the Nazis for distributing leaflets criticizing the Nazi regime. And their names are very present in Munich to this day, especially the siblings Hans and Sophie Scholl, but also Willy Graf, Christoph Probst, Kurt Huber, and Alexander Schmorell. Overall, I feel like there was a lot of focus on the suffering of the Jews and how cruel and inhumane things were. We also learned a lot about Nazi propaganda and about the political, economic, and cultural factors that made World War II and the Holocaust even possible and that led people to believe in such an awful ideology. I don't really remember learning a lot about who Hitler was as a person, and I don't remember talking a lot about the details of the war and warfare. We definitely covered the timeline of the important events of the war, but I don't remember talking about single battles or which weapons and strategies were used, etc. And I'm mentioning this because a lot of Americans here actually know way more about all of that than I do, and I think warfare in general is just a more popular topic in the US. Now, there's probably a lot from my school days that I forgot to mention, but I do remember that by like 8th or 9th grade, a lot of us were honestly getting a little tired of the topic, and we were sometimes just like, ugh, not again. But of course, looking back, it's definitely better to talk about it too much than not talking about it enough.
Facts.
And I definitely say that by the time we graduated, we walked out of there with a strong awareness for racism, discrimination, and identifying populist and nationalistic tendencies and propaganda. Now, of course,
see, in American schools, they talk about tough things only for a certain time period. So only from like 6th grade to 8th grade, they talk about slavery. Then when you get in high school, you talking about everything else from that point. Now you starting to deep dive into like different wars and different people, different time periods. It'd be nothing that's actually worth learning. That's how. Now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, now I'm understanding why I didn't pay attention to school. Because they talk about shit that don't matter. Literally. It don't matter, bro. Let's talk about something that actually does matter, and maybe y'all listen. But y'all talk about shit that literally don't matter. And I knew from a young kid that I'm not going to use this information once I leave here. It's only relevant here, bro. Only relevant here. They want me to sit here and talk about all they leaders and shit, all the people who did something good, but they never want to talk about the bad times. They never want to take accountability, you know.
well, we're identified there with.
Then we're not gonna talk about the propaganda, right? We know America has propaganda, so I can only imagine what the propaganda is in the school books.
A strong awareness for racism, discrimination, and identifying populist and nationalistic tendencies and propaganda. Now, of course, World War II is something that you'll also be confronted with in real life outside of school, and that can be a very individual experience because depending on your family environment, your friends, the field you work in, you'll be exposed to it in very different ways. In my case, I definitely always felt relatively close to the topic because unlike most other people my age, it's not my great-grandparents that lived through the war, but my grandparents. Everyone just had children very late in my family, so all four of my grandparents lived through the war as teenagers and adults, and therefore were affected or even involved in it in different ways. One side of my family is from Upper Silesia, for example, which was German territory at the time, but now belongs to Poland. So when the Eastern Front got there, they lost their home and became refugees. They were actually part of the winter treks of January of 1945, which was historically cold, and they fled partly by foot and then started from zero after the war, like so many people in Germany. One of my grandfathers was also imprisoned in the GDR for a few years. Now, only one of my grandparents was still alive when I was born, my grandma, but I did hear a lot of first-hand stories from her, and of course I heard a lot of stories about my other grandparents from relatives, and I read about it in their memoirs. So that's my personal connection to the topic, and maybe that's also the reason why I feel extra passionate about fighting discrimination of minorities and why I believe that war is the worst thing humans have ever invented. Now, since I'm not the only one of 84 million people in Germany, and as I said earlier, curriculums vary a lot throughout the country, I wanted to make sure that the experiences and opinions of other Germans are included in this video as well. It actually received over 230 submissions to my survey that I sent out, so thank you guys so much to everyone who took the time to fill that out. I will say it was a lot of work to go through it all, and I won't be able to mention every single answer here, but it was fascinating to read, and I'm going to summarize it as best as I can. And I'll also be sharing quotes from the survey with you guys in German because I wanted people to be able to answer this in their native language, but I'll add English subtitles. To give you guys a general overview at first, I did get answers from people of all ages, from 13 to 65, and from all over Germany, and even a couple responses from Austria. And to my question, how well would you say school educated you about World War II, the Holocaust, and the Third Reich? Nobody selected not at all. About 2% said insufficiently, 14% said basics were covered, but it could have been more. 47% said very well, and about 38% even selected almost too well. The topic was hashed and rehashed over and over again. So I think that shows that most people definitely felt like the topic was taught about very intensely. All other questions were open-ended questions, by the way, so I can't tell you the exact percentages, but I'd say the overall consensus was that the topic was taught in a rather objective, but also serious and very respectful way, while being brutally honest, and most people said that it was always age-appropriate still and was slowly building up throughout the grades. Carina from Dortmund wrote, for example, in der 8. Klasse haben wir erst gelernt, was das Dritte Reich war, wer Hitler war, die NSDAP und so weiter. In der 9. dann großer Fokus auf die Judenverfolgung. In der 10. Klasse dann den Krieg im Detail besprochen, Filme und Dokumentationen geschaut, die teilweise sehr brutal waren, aber einfach nur die Realität abgebildet haben.
They talking about it in 10th grade, bro. We've been done talking about it. And that's what I'm saying. You see how they said it'd be for age appropriate? So that means we would talk about it in middle school and it's age appropriate. So they're not telling you everything. They're only telling you certain bits and pieces. Propaganda. I mean, you really can't say propaganda because people are young, so they really can't learn. But it's still propaganda in a way because you could still be talking about it later on in life. But no, you're not. Okay? You're talking about it here, and that's it. Right? First of all, like, we all gonna remember this shit. All right? We're not gonna remember every single detail. You have to keep talking about it over the years, and it's gonna slowly get into your brain, and you're gonna understand it more and more. You can't just talk about it for a certain period of time and then never talk about it again and then expect everybody to understand. That's not how it works. All right? You see how you talking about y'all built up to it?
Bewusstsein, dass Faschismus keine Meinung ist, sondern ein Verbrechen. Corbinian from Hessen. Meiner Meinung nach wurde das Thema zwar häufig relativ brutal durch Bilder, Videos, Filmaufnahmen etc., aber dennoch altersgerecht behandelt. Häufig wurde bei Opferzahlen und Holocaust-Morden tief ins Detail eingegangen. Dennoch war die Behandlung des Themas meiner Meinung nach genauso angebracht, weil man dadurch überhaupt erst den schieren Schrecken und die unfassbare Unmenschlichkeit begreifen konnte. Es war häufig nicht schön anzusehen, doch genau so haben wir gelernt, was dieser Abschnitt der deutschen Geschichte überhaupt bedeutet. And Alex from Karlsruhe said, es war angemessen, respektvoll den Opfern gegenüber und informativ. In Geschichte haben wir uns kritisch damit auseinandergesetzt und haben uns Fragen gestellt wie, was war die Ideologie der Nazis? Was waren ihre Ziele? Wie konnte es dazu kommen? Es gab auch einen Vortrag von Salih Perel, einem Überlebenden des Holocausts bei uns an der Schule, der für alle ab der 8. Klasse...
You know what I look you want to do now? I want to see if I do have a good grasp on it. Let's see if I can make... Let's see if I can find like some Germany school system like questionnaire. Let's see if I can answer the questions right. All right. This is denazification though. As of course it's in German. Ugh, I didn't think about that part. It's probably all gonna be in German, bro. I don't think I can find them. See if I can take like a test, maybe. Here we go. Quiz myself on Hitler. All right, here we go. Let's see if I can do this. I don't know how to do it though. All right. Which year did he become Chancellor of Germany? It was 1945 is when he died. Number one, we know that. Okay. It had to be low key like around this time. It's one of these three, obviously. I'm trying to think. Because if he died in 45, how long? Because when he became chancellor is when everything went to shit. So how long was it? Did he have like 10 long years of that? No, I can't look anything up. I'm going to say, because if he did it in 29, that's insane, bro. That's a long time. That's 20 years. I think it's 39 or 33. I'm gonna go 39. It was 33. Okay. Which political party did lead? It's this one. Yeah. Which did in March 30th, 1936 that violated the terms? I don't know this. Took back German colony in China. No, I don't know that. Reoccupied. Refused to accept responsibility. Refuse to respect responsibility is funny. It might be that one though. Oh, Tom. Let's try that one. Oh, reoccupied. I ain't know that one. This is going straight off oversimplified. Whatever oversimplified put in the video, that's all I know. So all the other stuff I don't know. We gotta maybe take this again at the end of we listen about watch all the videos about World War II and World War I. I think this is the original president, right? As a part of the crisis over in 1938, Chamberlain flew to... Oh, shit. The Chamberlain flew. I don't know this. Which year did occupy the... What? Come on, bro. I don't know this shit. Nope, don't know this. So it's obviously a lot more we gotta learn about. Appeasement was a name given to Britain policy in the 1930s, which permitted Hitler to extend German territory. Which of the following two points linked it to are false? Policy linked with Britain could not afford a financial cost of another war. Historians today tend to regard a possible appeasement popular due to anti-war. Yeah, I think this is one. It's two. Yeah, it's this two. No, wow, okay. I got one of them right there. Invade the trigger to start second. Okay, I should know this. I think it was... No, it wasn't Poland. I think it's the United Kingdom. No. Poland. She just said Poland was small. Isn't Poland small? The Soviet Union, maybe? It's either the United Kingdom or the Soviet Union. I think the UK is at the top, though. I don't think he went to the war with people at the top. Or is UK right next to Germany? I think the Soviet Union is inside of Germany, though. Or it's either Poland or United Kingdom that's right next to Germany. Is Poland pretty big or no? I'm going United Kingdom. It was Poland. I knew it, bro. Always go with your first mind. What was the year the first... Oh, wow. I think he did it pretty... So if it was in if he got thing in, what was it, 1933? 31? No, 1339? It was 33 or 39. I think it was 33. Let me go back. Actually, you know what? Fuck that shit. I think it was 33. So that means that around... $37, $39, or $40. He did it fast. He did it super fast. As soon as he... But if it's 39, then that means he did it in 40. But if he did it in 33, if he was chancellor in 33, that means he did it in like 37. We're on 39. Well, first, well, did he do it the same year? Imagine he did it the same year he was a chancellor. $33, of course, bro. So that means he did it. He got elected as chancellor in 33 and then did it in the same year. That's insane. What is meant by the term? What the? Britain experienced a new type of Germany. I don't know this. Operation Foxley? Don't know that. Oh yeah, we never seen the full thing. Now I think about it. We gotta see it on the video because we don't even know how the end happened. Low key though. Is that everything? I got 30%. Okay. Alright.
Verpflichtend war. Eltern durften auch,
Alright.
wenn sie wollten. Er hat uns davon erzählt, was ihm passiert ist und wie es ihm damit ging. Am Ende durften wir auch Fragen stellen. Zum Thema Schuldgefühle hat er etwas gesagt, das mir viel geholfen hat. Ihm ist bei seinen Vorträgen aufgefallen, dass junge Menschen oft Schuldgefühle haben, obwohl sie nichts damit zu tun hatten. Das ändert aber nichts. Stattdessen ist es unsere Aufgabe, sicherzustellen, dass es sich nicht wiederholen kann. Es gab später auch noch einen Vortrag von einem Ex-Neonazi bei uns an der Schule. In der 11. haben 2 Geschichtskurse, meiner eingeschlossen, eine Exkursion zu einem Konzentrationslager in Frankreich gemacht. In deutschen Religion haben wir uns mehr mit der Perspektive der Verfolgten auseinandergesetzt und welche Rolle die Kirche zu der Zeit gespielt hat. Unter anderem durch das Tagebuch der Anne Frank. By the way, most people mentioned that they started talking about the topic sometime between 5th and 9th grade, but a few even said it was brought up as early as 3rd grade, and lining up with my own experience throughout all kinds of subjects. Annie from Northern Westphalia even shared her experience in a video.
I think that we talked about in almost every subject. Let's see, history class, for sure. German class, where we would read important literature like Anne Frank. Religion, which is also part of the curriculum in most German schools, where we would not only learn about our religion, but also about others. And then English class, because we also learned about history. French, same thing. French history, where we talked about the Normandy and D-Day and you name it.
Silke from Oldenburg said about this: Im Geschichtsunterricht wurde recht ausführlich über das "Wie konnte sowas nur passieren" gesprochen. Der verlorene Krieg, Wirtschaftskrise, vorhandener latenter Antisemitismus. Im Kunstunterricht ging es um die Idealbilder, die sich in Bildern, Statuen und Architektur wiederfinden und um das, was entartete Kunst genannt wurde. In Deutsch und Englisch passende Lektüren. One person said that they watched The Boy in the Striped Pajamas in English class, for example, and in German class people mentioned reading the books I mentioned earlier, but also books like The Diary of Anne Frank, Als Hitler das rosa Kaninchen stahl, or Die Blechtrommel, and movies such as Schindler's List. A few people also mentioned analyzing Hitler's rhetoric, as well as his speech and writing style, to better understand his propaganda techniques. Hitler's own book, Mein Kampf, however, was only mentioned by one person in the whole survey, which probably has to do with the fact that up until 2016, it wasn't actually allowed to be printed in Germany due to copyright issues, so if the book was discussed in school, it was usually just in the form of extracts. In addition to learning about personal destinies from books and movies, a lot of people also mentioned visiting concentration camps. I was actually a little surprised by how many people mentioned that, especially since not every school is close to a former concentration camp, so for many this included an overnight trip. Some people even traveled to Poland to visit Auschwitz. Charlotte from Niedersachsen said, der Besuch des KZs in Bergen-Belsen ist bei uns Standard in der 9. oder 10. Klasse, was ich wichtig fand, weil man die Dimensionen viel stärker nachempfinden kann. Zusätzlich war ein Teil unserer Klasse in Krakau-Auschwitz, was ein bis heute einprägendes Ereignis war. Von dem Lager ist ja verhältnismäßig viel erhalten und die Bilder sind mir im Kopf geblieben. Danach wurde uns auch der Raum gegeben, über unsere Eindrücke zu reden, in einer Runde mit der mitreisenden Lehrkraft. Ich würde behaupten, dass jeder Deutsche einmal dort oder in einem vergleichbar gut erhaltenen KZ gewesen sein sollte. Carina wrote, vor allem der Besuch mit Übernachtung im KZ Buchenwald war eine Erfahrung, die mir bis heute, 14 Jahre später, noch sehr stark im Gedächtnis geblieben ist. Was mir retrospektiv positiv in Erinnerung geblieben ist, dass nicht beschönigt wurde. Man hat uns immer die brutale Wahrheit darüber gesagt, was die Nazis den Menschen angetan haben, egal wie grausam. In addition to that, a lot of people mentioned visiting museums, memorials, synagogues, Jewish cemeteries, and things like the Reichsparteitagsgelände in Nürnberg or the home of Klaus von Stauffenberg even. A lot of schools also organized a trip to Berlin, which is actually something we did too in 10th grade, and that certainly included visiting the memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe, among other things. And a lot of people also said that they had historical witnesses talk at their schools, like we heard in one of the quotes earlier, which I think is one of the most valuable experiences you could have, especially since today most of them aren't around anymore. One thing that I could definitely tell from the survey was how heavily people's experiences were dependent on the teachers they had. I think that's always the case in school, of course, but I think specifically with this topic, not everyone had a good experience. Sabine wrote, for example, Meine Lehrer waren von der Nachkriegsgeneration, die das Schweigen gebrochen haben. Allerdings haben sie das Thema überkompensiert. Uns wurden sehr stark Schuldgefühle vermittelt. Ab der 3. Klasse haben wir Bücher über das Thema gelesen. Die waren natürlich noch nicht so brutal, aber später wurden wir nicht geschont. Wir haben grausamste Bilder ansehen müssen und waren auch in Auschwitz oder in Israel, wo wir unter anderem mit Opfern des Holocaust geredet haben. Insgesamt hat mich die Art und Weise, wie uns der Holocaust in der Schule beigebracht wurde, ziemlich traumatisiert. Ich bin später ins Ausland gegangen und habe dort erst nach Jahren ein relativ normales Verhältnis zu meiner Nationalität entwickeln können. Heute habe ich keine Schuldgefühle mehr. Allerdings tragen wir Deutsche eine Verantwortung, dass dieses Thema nicht vergessen wird. And a person from Mainz shared another pretty negative experience. Responding to the question in what manner it was taught, they said, sehr detailliert, fast schon schwärmerisch, für die Ausländer in der Klasse sehr beleidigend. Hatten eine ziemlich braune alte Dame als Lehrerin in Geschichte. Es wurde definitiv zu oft von den guten alten Zeiten gesprochen. Ich fand es schrecklich, dass sie eine Lehrkraft zugelassen haben, die schon fast verherrlichend über so ein schreckliches Thema gesprochen hat und einem jeden, der eine negative Einstellung dazu vertrat, eine schlechte Note reingedrückt hat. I do want to say that this experience was definitely an exception, but I wanted to include it to show a few different aspects here. Other people were very lucky with their teachers though, like Lara from Duisburg. Ich fand, dass alle Lehrer es sehr gut angegangen haben, den richtigen Ton gewählt haben und uns auch bei schlimmen Bildern oder Videos vorgewarnt haben. Wer zwischendurch mal kurz raus wollte, durfte es auch. And there were also a few people that still experienced the time when the topic wasn't talked about a lot in school, like Katrin from North Rhine-Westphalia. In meinem Alter, 2. Generation nach dem Krieg, war es nicht sehr detailliert und wurde eher überflogen. Das eigentliche Wissen kam nicht aus der Schule, sondern mit dem Älterwerden aus Dokus. Bei uns als Schülern kam es so rüber wie, okay, wir können das Thema nicht aussparen, aber wir machen es so kurz und oberflächlich wie möglich. Ich glaube, erst jetzt, wo wesentlich mehr Zeit vergangen ist, traut man sich und ist nicht mehr ganz so beklemmt. One question that I personally found extremely interesting, and that might even be useful for any teachers out there, is which topics were covered repeatedly and which ones people felt like weren't covered enough. The vast majority of these over 230 people that answered the survey agreed that the main focus was clearly on the Holocaust, so the persecution of Jewish people, while the persecution of other minorities like Sinti and Romani, homosexuals, political opponents, people of color, and the euthanization of disabled people, etc., were barely covered. Other aspects that people said weren't covered enough included World War II outside of Germany, including the Pacific War, but even the actions of Germany's allies or the German invasion in Greece or Yugoslavia. Those are all things that I personally agree with too. I don't remember any of those things being part of the curriculum. And a lot of people also said they would have liked to learn more about post-war Germany and the Denazification process, also about the history of anti-Semitism and that it wasn't something that the Nazis just came up with themselves, about German refugees. And I also saw quite a lot of people sharing my experience that they didn't learn a lot about the details of the war in terms of tactics, different battles, etc., and about Hitler as a person.
I think no one is born evil, and I cannot recall that we talked about what had happened to him, why he became that kind of person. So yeah, I think this would have been also important to understand.
One thing that was very interesting was that about half of the people said that they really focused on how the Nazis seized power and how the weaknesses of the Weimar Republic led to that, which is what I mentioned too, that was focused on a lot in my school. But then the other half listed this under things that weren't covered enough. And many also said it should have been talked about more how we can recognize warning signs and parallels of similar developments in society today. And last but not least, this was a common point of criticism as well. Ich bereue auch, dass ich so wenig über andere geschichtliche Themen gelernt habe. Der Holocaust und der Zweite Weltkrieg hat alles überschattet. Which I would generally agree with. We really didn't get to cover a whole lot of other topics of recent history, but at the same time, I also think that it was important that we covered the topic so intensely, like Markus from Hildesheim says too. In der Schule hatte ich immer das Gefühl, dieses Thema wäre überrepräsentiert. Wenn ich jetzt mitbekomme, wie schlecht einige darüber informiert sind und wie diskriminierendes, rassistisches und rechtsradikales Gedankengut in und rund um Deutschland wieder aufkommt, wünsche ich mir, dass all diejenigen sich nochmal gründlich damit beschäftigen und damit dafür sorgen, nichts aus dieser furchtbaren Zeit auch nur ansatzweise zu wiederholen. Britta from Berlin says, Bei mir kam die Message, dass das auf keinen Fall nochmal passieren darf und während den Anfängen definitiv rüber. Ich hatte auch noch viele 68er-Lehrer, deren Lebenswerk es quasi war, das Schweigen zu brechen. Ich hoffe, dass die jüngere Lehrergeneration das Erbe weiterführt. And even Laura, who became a history teacher, said this. Natürlich habe ich zwischendurch, wie wohl fast jeder deutsche Schülerin, das Gefühl gehabt, dass es zu viel thematisiert wird. Im Nachhinein finde ich es aber gut. Es hilft heute sehr dabei, rechte Parolen, wie Gaulands Aussage, der Nationalsozialismus sei Vogelschiss gewesen, einordnen zu können. In terms of how present the topic is outside of school in Germany today, people shared a lot of different opinions and experiences, and I won't be able to include all of them in this video, but many mentioned, for example, that some German TV channels pretty much show Nazi documentaries 24/7, which is definitely true, and I know that that can be pretty surprising for people visiting Germany. Some people said that the current political developments all around the world worry them, and that they feel like German politicians should be more actively fighting that.
1 second, y'all, hold on. All right.
Some mentioned how this whole topic of inherited guilt, Erbschuld, is still weighing on us as a country, but most people said that they think that Germany is doing a rather good job dealing with this topic, even though it's not perfect, and that it's important that the German government commemorates the victims of the NS regime on days like the International Holocaust Remembrance Day or on German Volkstrauertag and other memorial days. And some people also shared how difficult it can still be within their own families. I'm just going to read one quote from a young German that represents that pretty well. This is from Vivi, 18, from Lüneburg. In der Gesellschaft ist das ganz unterschiedlich. Es gibt halt so zwei Lager. Die einen finden es nicht genug, ich ebenfalls, und die anderen zu viel, darunter auch 4 Jugendliche. Gut finde ich den Umgang in den öffentlich-rechtlichen Medien. Gerade zum Beispiel Kika hatte eine gute Kampagne, um es den Kindern näher zu bringen. Der Krieg und ich heißt das, glaube ich. In meiner Familie wurde viel totgeschwiegen. Gerade was die Leute so gemacht haben. Alle meine Urgroßväter waren im Krieg und teilweise Jahre danach in Gefangenschaft. Wer weiß, was für Gräueltaten sie damals begangen haben. Jedoch arbeiten meine Mutter und ich viel auf an Kriegstraumata und Fluchtgeschichte. Meine Großeltern kamen als Kinder aus Ostpreußen. Jedoch sind einige in der Familie immer noch der Meinung, dass darüber nicht gesprochen werden soll. Einige haben ihre Schuld und Geheimnisse bereits mit ins Grab genommen.
Yeah.
Last but not least, is it okay to ask a German about World War II, the Holocaust, and Nazis, or is that offensive coming from a foreigner? Now, I didn't include this in my survey, but based on my experience, I can say yes, you can absolutely talk to us Germans about World War II. I even feel like a lot of Germans appreciate talking about it with outsiders.
I will
from
say
another...
too, like, y'all was wanting me to react to this video, or yeah, these videos, I say. I see that y'all definitely do care, you know. Y'all realize it was bad, and you're trying to move past it, like I said earlier. And yeah, that's all you could ask for. You know what I'm saying? Y'all actively trying to get me to react to these videos, because y'all could just be putting it off to the side. You feel me? But y'all actively trying to get me to react to these videos. So there you go.
Country, especially when they find that they're educated on the topic. However, it's definitely important to us to stay respectful. I found that Germans can be a little more sensitive to jokes about the whole topic, for example, and not
It's like, it's literally no reason for me to joke, all right? So I would never joke. Like, you know, I know some people have dirty jokes and stuff like that. I'm not really the type of person. I joke a lot. Y'all know I troll, you know what I'm saying? But I don't say dirty jokes, bro. I don't even laugh at dirty jokes. I don't. I'm sorry, bro. Now, I will laugh at dirty jokes about black people, though. You know what I'm saying? If it's actually funny. But, like, for Family Guy, for example, let me know in the comments if y'all ever watch Family Guy. But Family Guy has, you know, it's a comedy. So, they roast everybody. They roast black people, Asian people, white people, anybody. So, you know, if it's comedy, then I understand. But when it's like a regular person talking about it and they just trying to make a dirty joke, I can't, bro. You know, I just literally can't. It's like somebody laughing at a disabled person. It's like, I'm not about to laugh at that, bro. You know what I'm saying? I don't care how clever the joke was or how maybe funny it was. I'm not laughing at that, bro. You know, I feel like sometimes you gotta have morals, okay? Because anything that you laughing at somebody else, it could literally happen to you.
German is going to
Okay.
be in the mood to talk about it, especially if people are still in school or just graduated and might be a little tired of the topic. But generally, this is something that we're very open about in Germany, and most of us will not feel personally offended just because you bring up our dark past. Let me know if you guys agree with me on that or not in the comments, but I recently came across this video by Radical Living.
Hey Hans, I was wondering, since you're German and all, do Germans still feel like guilty about World War II? How do you feel about it? Are you hungry? You look hungry. I'm gonna make us some sandwiches, okay? Be right back. I mean, your grandfather must have fought in the war, right? You ever talk to him about how it was, being on the evil side and everything? Oh God, I think I forgot the sausages in the car.
What
I'm
type
gonna
of
go grab
refrigerator
them,
is
okay?
that?
And then he just ends up making
What
up
type of
more and more
refrigerator was
excuses and
that?
ends up driving away because he really wants to avoid talking about the topic. And even though I know it's satire, of course, and I'm not trying to deny that that's his reality, I just wholeheartedly disagree with the message of this. That's just never been my experience at all. By the way, just in general, it's a lot more common in Germany to talk about politics and difficult topics, even with strangers. And that's also why Germans often ask Americans very directly about controversial topics in the US and how they feel about them.
Let me know in the
Again,
comments.
thank you.
I was about to say what controversial topics y'all be asking us about, but number one is the guns. All right. Hit that button, that sub button. I love y'all. Away, y'all.